Hi, welcome back to the Website Success Show. It's Jules here, and today I want to talk about vibe coding. I've been working on a sales page for my local visibility workshop this week, and I've been messing around with some vibe coding. It's something that I've been coding and using code snippets for years, but a lot of people are talking about vibe coding now, and I've definitely got mixed feelings about this. So I thought I would just share with you today some of my thoughts, some of the things that I discovered from going through this process, and why it actually probably ended up costing me a lot more time than if I'd have just built the page myself, in just as the way I would normally build pages. So before we start, let's get everybody on the same page in terms of what vibe coding actually is. So vibe coding basically it allows non-coders, so people who don't know how to write code, or who, like me, I know how to read and write some code, but I'm certainly not an expert coder. But it allows you to use AI tools to create things like apps and websites just by prompting the AI tool to actually create the code for you. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag, because there's definitely some advantages to it, but I think it's something that we need to proceed with caution if we're using vibe coding. I think things will change over the next year or 2 years, or maybe not even that long, who knows. But I think this will probably get better. I think we'll get to a point where we get a mix between being able to use AI to help us, and probably some tools are already doing this, where you can prompt with AI, get AI to create the code, and then be able to go in and edit it. Because that's one of the big problems that came up, was the lack of ability to actually edit it without having to go through the whole process of getting the AI to edit the code for you. So I'm going to dive in. I'm going to, as I say, share some of the things that I did and kind of the process and where I ended up. And hopefully you'll find it helpful. I'm not sure whether it might just make you think about this, and it might just make you aware of what vibe coding is and why maybe not diving straight in and replacing all of your content in your website or all of your assets in your business with vibe coded stuff, why that might not necessarily be the best plan right now. So I'm going to share my screen. I wanted to run a live version of my local visibility workshop. This is all about getting your Google business profile updated and optimized within a session, where you actually come along to the session on your laptop and you optimize your profile there and then, with me guiding you through the process. I originally ran a Google Business Profile workshop back in 2023. It was the first online workshop that I ever ran, and it was one that I knew I wanted to do a workshop around Google profiles for a long time before I actually launched it, but I haven't done anything really with it since then. It's been on my website there for people to buy, but I've never ran it again as a live talk up until recently. But I did a workshop within a group that I'm a coach within, and it went really well, and people actually come along and made progress there and then, and it was like a get it done session. So I thought actually I'd really like to run this as a workshop for people to buy directly from me, and so that's why I needed to rewrite this sales page. I've had a sales page there for a while, well, since I ran the original workshop, that's just been selling it on Evergreen. And I knew that I needed to go in and make some changes. I've changed the name and just wanted to go in and actually redesign the sales page for this new workshop. So I already had a chat. I used ChatGPT to help me with this process and with the thought process and with what changes that I was going to make to the page. I don't know that I actually went into it with the intention to code the whole page. I don't think I did. I don't think I went into it thinking I was going to, code the whole page using AI. I am using it more as I'm creating stuff on my website, particularly blogs. But what I have realized after going through this process is that for things like sales pages and things that I'm not going to be repeatedly producing, like blogs, I'm creating them, fairly regularly. As I release podcast episodes, I'm turning them into blogs. Whereas actually for sales pages and things like that, it's not something that I'm doing that weekly. So I think, spoiler alert, but I think what I would say from all of this is that those kind of pages, those, I guess, core website pages, this all comes down to the core pages, that actually building it properly and having something that you can go in and easily make edits to, then that's going to, in the long run, I believe, is going to save you time. It's going to be better for your business, and it's going to give you a lot more flexibility moving forward, really. So I already had this chat with ChatGPT, and I'm starting about 3/4 of the way down. So the arrow it's just at the top of the page. So this is the point that I started at, where I started talking about this workshop. So I went through, I just had a few little thoughts, that, you know, a brainstorming about the differences that I wanted with the workshop, and it helped me to kind of come up with a new name for it. Then I gave it the URL of the sales page, the existing sales page, and said, this is the one that needs updating. So ChatGPT could read through the copy on that page, suggest some edits that we could make. I then took a screenshot of the existing page and posted that in the ChatGPT chat and said, this is the layout of the current page. And it says, the issue is this page feels like it was written in 2023, not 2026. Fair enough, it was. So then it came up with some suggestions. So it suggested some things that I could change. So then I asked it, can you write me a HTML version of this page that I can paste into a code block? My thinking was, at this point, was to get some visual ideas. I'm not a designer, and I don't like even though I'm not starting with a blank page here, it feels a bit like a blank page to me. So if I thought, well, if it can give me some visual design ideas, then great. So that's what it did. So it created this little code block, and it's not little, but it's a code block. Bearing in mind that ChatGPT also already knows about things like my branding and my messaging, and, you know, my ChatGPT is well trained on my business. So it created, you know, a HTML version, a code version of my sales page. So what I then did is I copied this and I pasted it into an app called CodePen. Now, I've used CodePen for years, since I did actually firstly learn to build websites properly using code and edit WordPress websites using code. I've been using CodePen just for little snippets. I actually use it even for things like podcast editing. I do use this every week and I find it helpful. But what I did was just copied and pasted that HTML in here, and it then gives me a visual representation of this page. It was okay. And actually, as I'm looking at this now again, there are some elements of this that I then took forward into the page that I was building in FEA Create. So I then probably spent, I don't know, at least 2 days. No, I gave up a bit quicker than that. I knew that I immediately didn't want to have it as a whole page written with this. Let me see what the next thing. So, I gave it my updated brand colors. I have changed my brand colors recently. So it then made a few changes. And this was one of the areas where it started to go wrong, because rather than giving me the whole code again, it then split it into giving me the styles, so the bit at the top that sets the styling of the page. So it basically broke it down and expected me to go into the code and find the bits that I needed to change. And there was a couple of points where I actually asked it, no, give me the whole code, and then it would give me a slightly different version of the code. And this was kind of the start of this frustration of actually realizing I've already wasted quite a bit of time doing this, whereas there were much more important things that I needed to do with this page that could have made this a lot faster. So as I was looking down the page, I was reading through some of the sections and I started realizing that some of the language wasn't quite right from the old page. Now, probably if I had gone through and done this first, and that's what I would always advise clients to do, is make sure you've got the copy ready first before you go in and start actually designing on the page. This workshop and deciding to do this workshop was a bit of a I'm just going to do it decision, which I do often have that in my business, is where I think, no, I'm going to do something and I just go and do it. I'm not diagnosed with ADHD, but I definitely have ADHD tendencies, and I think that's part of that, of like, yeah, I get an idea and I want to implement it right away, but that doesn't necessarily then help me to do things in the most efficient way. When I'm working with clients and Website Growth Club members, we have blueprints for our pages, and that is how I would suggest that we do it, is we actually go into the blueprint document and we follow it through and actually write the copy first and foremost. It's going to make it much easier. I talked about this back in episode 108 of the podcast, where I talk about the 3 brain modes that we need when we're actually working on our websites. So we need to, first of all, do the strategy. So work out exactly what it is that we're wanting to say. So I'm definitely doing the strategy part in these bits mixed in with actually writing the copy. Then we write the copy and we gather all the images and everything for our page, and then we go and implement it. And I think this is a real example. And even as I'm talking this through now, I'm just realizing how much I just didn't follow my own process there. And that's part of the reason why I got stuck on this, I think, or not even got stuck. I didn't get stuck. I just kept on going and kept on trying to get this to actually do it well for me. And the point where I then started making progress was the point where I decided to stop messing around with all this code. At this point, I then decided I would use code snippets rather than trying to do the whole page at once, which was getting really frustrating with trying to get it to edit bits. So I then was trying to do it section by section. So I said, okay, let's just start with that first section at the top of the page, get that bit right for me. So we started doing that, and we started going through section by section with it just creating a snippet for each section, which that then was where it got really confusing, because it was then adding all of the stylings into every single snippet it was putting in the page. It then meant that it was massively bloated code. And this is one of the problems with vibe coding. In order to make things look good, you sometimes have to do these fudges. Every piece of code that you put into a website is something that then has to be read by the bots that are reading through those pages. And by adding that styling into every part of the page, it meant that code was massively bloated. It meant that page would be slow to load. And it's just all extra stuff, that's extra noise that's not needed. And it wasn't really looking much better than what I'd already created. We then went through loads and loads of edits before we got to a point where I then started getting it to give me the individual code snippets. So we'd already done lots of edits on the copy, which I probably should have done those separately. And then I got to the point where I was like, right, okay, I need to actually build this. And part of the problem with ChatGPT is that it always gives you a little suggestion now at the end of every prompt. And back in episode 128, I talked about, is ChatGPT making you doubt yourself? And this is exactly what happens when ChatGPT does then end up making you doubt yourself. So we went through massively more edits than I probably needed to, had I just sat down and written this out myself, or at least got the outline of this page written out, been through my own sales page blueprint and done it that way. It would have been a lot faster for me. So then it gave me some code. Let's have a little look. I think this was actually the point where it gave me something that looked different. So it didn't look as good. So I'm not even sure how much time I'd spent by this point. Definitely hours trying to get this right. Definitely lots of frustration trying to get this right. And so at this point, I decided, okay, well, rather than building it all as one page, I would do it as little code snippets. So individual pieces, and just build the individual pieces one by one. I did go back and forth with that a little bit. I think really that was probably until the end of that day that I was like, right, I feel really done with this. And towards the end of the day, I was like, actually, I want to get this live. I want to get this done. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to just build this page. And so I started, first of all, building the sections that were easy. So I went back to the original version of the page and I thought, well, I'll work with that. And I can actually start building that in FEA Create. So I came into the existing sales page that I already had and made a clone of it so that I had something where I could work on it and make edits without the live sales page being wrecked right now. So I did this, and I did a little bit of both as well. So I did a little bit of building it with dragging and dropping in the sections individually. So FEA Create is a white label version of Go High Level. This isn't a video about how to use it, but basically I just came in and I built it the same as I would any other page, where I already had some stuff within the page. I already had headings. I already had paragraph copy that I could just then clone these sections and drag them down the page and use them that way, which made it a lot easier. So then I thought, well, okay, so with this section here, this section about Google search is changing, I thought, well, I'll see if it can create this section for me. So I probably spent, I don't know, at least another hour trying to see if I could actually get the vibe coding working. And I have always enjoyed messing around with code, so it does feel like a bit of a challenge for me. But what I realized is that there are certain challenges that my business doesn't need. And actually me sitting and messing around with that is definitely something that I didn't need to be doing. It was not a good use of my time. So in the end, I then spent probably about another day creating this page, and it's all created with proper elements. It looks good, I think. It looks quite similar to the page that had been created in the code. Not that similar, actually. I'm looking now, and there are definitely things that are different. But the difference is that it looks like the rest of my website. It looks like my branding. It was very easy. Once I then went through and read and worked out what bits I wanted to change, it was very easy, and it will continue to be very easy for me to make edits to this page without having to go back and forth with AI, getting AI to make changes. And one thing that I have found with this is that the AI will often, you'll tell it to change one thing and it will change lots of other different things, or the code will just get a little bit messed up, and then you're then trying to fix that part of it as well as the thing that you were originally trying to make the changes with. So I definitely think that's one of the downsides of vibe coding, is that it's not easy to make edits. And this is one of the reasons I would advise against using vibe coding to create your whole website, because what you end up with is a technical debt in your business. So this is a big problem of this, really. So you end up with a website that's full of code that you didn't write and no human wrote and you didn't ask for. It's got all sorts of extra bloated stuff in there that you didn't ask for, and it's sitting on your website, which is the thing that is making sales in your business. All of the future changes that you want to make to that site then have to go back through that code. It's a bit like having only one person in your business that can ever make edits to your website, but also you can't then go and hire somebody else to make edits to that website because nobody knows how that code was put together. And the problem with AI written code as well is it can then leave you vulnerable. And these are conversations that don't seem to be happening very much about the security risk of vibe coded websites. So I finished this page anyway and got it live. And now I have something that I can actually go back in and edit. And this is something that I can also then use these elements on other pages of my website if I need to as well. So I do use coding for my website, and I use code snippets. So when I create a blog, I do use some code snippets within my blog. So the main page itself exists, and all of the code that needs to keep the structure of that page right and keep that within my whole website infrastructure, that all exists. So I have the headings, I have my navigation menus, are all there built as normal elements within a page. And then I have a few of these, you can see these custom HTML things here. I have a few different custom snippets that I use for the pages. So if I preview the custom codes, what you can see, let me show you the front end because the Buzzsprout embed. So first of all, one of the HTML codes is the Buzzsprout embed. So people can listen to my podcast episode directly on my website and it shows up there. Then I also have the actual blog itself, which is this second code snippet here. So that's this one. That again, it takes time to do this. I spent probably about 3 or 4 hours working with Claude to generate a prompt that I can now use every week, that has my branding in, that understands exactly the structure that I want these blogs to be laid out in, and it links to my other content on my website. I have conversations back and forth with Claude about that. So I'm not just outsourcing all of this. And most importantly, is based on my podcast episodes. So this is very much my content that I've already recorded, and it's just being changed into a blog. It's just being changed into a written format, basically. So that's where it is then not just AI generated commodity content that anyone could create. This is about my spoken words translated into a blog on my website. And this has been great because what it then helps me to do is very quickly get these blogs written and get them live. And I don't do it for every podcast episode, just for the ones that I feel are really important and are creating that bank of knowledge and that creating that authority that I want to on my website. And the reason I do this, I actually build my blogs within Website Builder, because the blog within FEA Create, within Go High Level, is still not quite at a point where I love to use it. There's not enough flexibility on the layout of the pages. We can't add, right as I'm talking right now, we can't add schema, so structured data to each individual blog post. And that's really important. So that's why I still build mine in the Website Builder. And it's fine. It works for me. And I like it because it means that I can make my blogs look really good, and I'm happy for them to be content on my website. But again, that took time. It took a lot of time for me to actually get this set up properly. And I'm familiar with code and familiar with what the problems could be with it. But because this is just body copy in a blog, that's why there's less risk of security. And I'm going to come on to that and some of the problems with whole pages and whole websites that have been vibe coded. There are a couple of other snippets on this page as well. So this is my Success Without Socials community. This is a snippet which is one that I use as a universal element. So if you're familiar with the Go High Level website builder, you'll be used to global and universal sections that you can use throughout any website and any funnel. And this has been really helpful, actually, having this here. So if I come back to show the custom code, and if I open the code editor, then we can see that what this gives us here is just a small amount of code, but it then gives me this banner here that I can then use in different places throughout my website. The same for a free download for my freebies and those kind of things. But it does something which we can't do in Go High Level, which is make the whole element clickable. So whereas if I show you on the front end of my blog, it should be able to just click on the whole element and for it to click through. So that's what I've done with these cards. If I come to my blog page, these are also code snippets, which I'm going to start using these moving forward because it just looks a bit neater. It means you can just click anywhere on this page and it just looks a bit more professional. As the website builder gets better and as things develop, then maybe that will come anyway, and so we won't need to worry about doing it manually. If you're using the blog builder, then you probably don't have to worry so much about that because it kind of does it all for you. I'm just not keen on the way that it actually looks on the front end. So all that to say, there are times to use AI to write code for you. I think if you have some fundamental understanding of what you're doing, a bit like everything else, if you know what you're outsourcing and you have some understanding about the vulnerabilities of it as well, then it can be genuinely helpful. I kind of think of it like junk food. So yes, you can eat takeaway food and junk food, and it does a job. It will give you calories, it will give you energy, it will keep you alive. But long term, if that's all that your body is getting, then it is going to have a detrimental effect on your health, on your longevity, the longevity of your life. It's not going to be good for you. And I kind of think of vibe coding as a little bit like that for websites. So yes, it might look great. It might look fantastic at the front end. A bit like, I guess, if you go to a restaurant that makes amazing meals, but maybe they're full of fat and full of sugar and really not good for you. It might look amazing, but again, on the inside, it's not necessarily helping you. I think if we think of it like that, then we can understand why it is maybe not such a great, it's certainly not great to dive into it without understanding of what you're actually doing. There's also the thing of, if you've got an existing website and you decide to vibe code your new, and to create a new website vibe coded, there are all sorts of implications for your SEO. Back in episode 10 of the podcast, I talked about website migration mistakes that can sabotage your SEO. So it's worth having a listen to that. Some things will have changed since then. That was a couple of years ago that I recorded that episode, but the fundamentals are still there, that if you change the code in the back end of your website, and it might even look exactly the same, but if you change the code in the back end, then that can have a really serious effect on your SEO. And I want to talk a little bit about technical debt as well. So I've had a lot of conversations over the years with website owners, with business owners who've got websites where they are either hand coded or created on WordPress or created somewhere else, or they've had it built for them on any platform really, and they don't know how to make any edits to their website. And in some cases, they don't even have the ability to be able to log in and make any changes or learn how to make any changes. And that is a technical debt in your business. So it's a technical debt is where you have something in your business that it's going to cost you time and money to be able to upkeep it and to make sure that it actually isn't damaging your business, or that it's actually doing the things that you want. So technical debt is definitely something that happens with websites, and it happens anyway. But this is a real danger, that if you have a fully AI coded website and all of a sudden there's some security issue or some issue that becomes a really pressing issue, because there's always issues that drum away in the background, like my SEO is not doing very well, or people aren't converting when they come through to my website. And that in itself can be a technical debt. If it takes you 4 hours to go through and make small edits to a sales page, for example, then that's a technical debt, because it should not be the case that happens. But also, if you get those emergencies where suddenly you realize that there's a vulnerability within the code on your website, and it can be hacked, and your client's personal data, their payment details, their card details, any of their personal data really, even down to their IP address, if that is able to be scraped from your website, then that's a real problem for your business. And if you've got nobody who can go in and actually fix that, think about what the implications could be for your business around that, really. And this can happen with any website builder. There can be vulnerabilities and things built into any website builder. But the thing with having the established platforms like WordPress, Go High Level, Squarespace, Wix, even something like GoDaddy, all of those platforms have lots and lots of users. So people are looking for the vulnerabilities, and they have teams of people whose job it is to actually find and fix those vulnerabilities. Whereas your almost hand-coded website, and they are, fundamentally they are hand-coded or AI-coded website. If there are vulnerabilities that come up there, you might not even know about them until it's a real serious problem in your business. And we don't just have to worry now about human hackers, because there are also going to be bots out there. AI can then go out and look for these vulnerabilities in websites that then could hold your business to ransom, really. So there's definitely the technical debt in terms of not even be able to make changes to your website so that it functions right and does what you want it to in your business, brings you clients, brings you traffic, makes you sales, makes you money in your business, which is what it should do. But there's also that thing of the security. And that's one thing I'm not hearing a lot of conversations going on around this. I was at a workshop a few weeks ago, and I asked this question because they were talking about vibe coding websites. And I asked the question of, the security of it. And it was very much brushed over. It was like, oh yeah, no, you don't need to worry about that. And even with most of the training that I've seen being delivered about AI, it's very much covered on a surface level. I would love to know who is actually talking about this and who is an expert on this kind of stuff, because I'm definitely not an expert on the security of AI written code and knowing where the vulnerabilities are. But I know that they are out there, and I know that it is a problem. The other problem is that everything looks the same as well. I think AI written pages are very recognizable now. I could definitely find it quite easy to recognize a website that had been built in Go High Level and used one of their templates, because that I could tell you what SEO problems existed with them before looking at anything else. So the heading tags were always wrong, terrible hierarchy, buttons and things just looked like a templated website. And we might think, oh yeah, so if I use AI, I can make it not look like a template. And I'm definitely not anti-templates. I think they can be helpful. But again, even with that, I would never say use a whole page template. I'd be looking at the individual elements that I could bring in and make the template fit the copy and not the other way around. So the things that you've got ready to go onto your website should then dictate what it actually looks like. So yeah, definitely worth thinking about that, because we don't want our businesses to look like everything else. We don't really want our websites to look like they're AI written. And I think it's a bit like the AI written copy, where we can now start to really spot that, and it stands out. And it actually, a lot of stuff stands out as being written by AI, and maybe it hasn't been. So this is the problem, because it's all written on human stuff, human written content. Then this is where it causes a problem, really. So there's definitely that. There's also the environmental impact of it as well. I'm not going to go into this in a massive way, but AI does have an environmental cost. And even just looking at that long chat that I had with ChatGPT, it costs resources to do that. And if we've got to do that every single time that we need to make a change to our website, we've got to go in and have a great big long chat like that, then that is another cost that we probably should be thinking about. And obviously the time that it's taken me to get this page up and live, whereas actually I could definitely have had this done a lot faster. If I'd have followed my own process and actually done the strategy, then got the copy written, and then just gone in and built it. And I definitely could have done that with what was there already. Maybe I could have then got some ideas on the design of the page. I've got loads of stuff in my Pinterest board. I've got loads of website designs in there that I could just go in and use those, or I could have just even used the stuff that was already there, and it would have been done a lot faster. And done is definitely better than perfect. Now, I haven't mentioned there is actually an AI builder within FEA Create, and I did try using that a little bit, and I asked it to make one change to the page, and it went through and changed quite a lot of stuff, including some of the universal sections that were on other pages. So luckily I didn't save the page, I just backed out of it. But that was something that immediately made me realize that definitely that builder within there, it might seem like it's tempting there, oh, tell me what you want to do with this page on that left hand side, but I would suggest not doing that, because again, it can cause all the other problems that I've talked about in this episode, really. So I hope this has kind of given you an idea of, so that's just my story of using vibe coding right now, and the lessons that I've learned from doing that. And I hope, if anything, like what my takeaway for you would be with this is that there are a lot of people out there right now telling us how amazing all this AI stuff is. And I definitely think AI is great. I think, AI can really help us as business owners. But the things that I would be cautious about using AI for is outsourcing your thinking. So the things that rob us of our creativity, and the things that can make us doubt ourselves, make us doubt what we actually believe in, and make us doubt our own ability to do what we do, then there's definitely that side of things. So be cautious around using it around that. And then actually asking it to do things in our business that should be done by an expert. If there's a shortcut, then that can be great. But if it's a shortcut that in the long run causes you a whole host of other problems, then it's a bit like the junk food analogy. So we definitely need to be aware of what we're actually doing in our business with the technology that's there. There was a story this weekend about OpenAI, who created the creators of ChatGPT. And I saw it in the supermarket as I was doing my shopping. I saw on the front page of the newspaper about AI agents going rogue, and they were testing them. And I think they said all of the main big ones had actually gone off and done things that they weren't supposed to. And I think with OpenAI, I had a little note about this. So it's OpenAI says its AI went rogue and launched an unprecedented cyber attack. Now, if there's nothing more terrifying than that, then we all know that probably the robot's going to end up taking over. So I think just being aware of how we're using it in our business, and just approaching it with a cautiously optimistic attitude. I think really we often end up doing more when we really need to be doing things better. We probably need to be doing less. We're all so overwhelmed and so bombarded with all of the things that we should be doing in our business. And actually, the promises that we are sold on how easy all of this stuff is, I think we have to look at who's selling it and what do they have to gain from selling it, and is it actually going to help us in the long run. So I hope this has been helpful. Let me know if you have any comments or if you have any thoughts on this, then do let me know. Come and join my Success Without Socials community to join like-minded business owners who want to grow their business without relying on social media. Have a look at my local visibility workshop. You can find that at the website successhub.com. If you go to the navigation menu and look at the courses, you'll find it there. And I will no doubt be back to talk about this again, because this is evolving and things are changing, and who knows what will be available to us even in 6 months' time, let alone a year. But the work that you're doing on your website today, and especially if you're doing it in a way where you can make edits to it in the future very easily, and you know it's been built with the right foundations in place, then all the better. And you're then building an asset for your business. And that work you're doing right now will pay dividends for you in the future. So I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you soon.